Revelation 12:11 says, they overcame, and they overcame and conquered him because of the blood of the Lamb and because of the word of their testimony, for they did not love their lives and renounce their faith even when faced with death. So my testimony goes a little bit like this. My name is Patrick, by the way, for those that don't know me. I was born in Zimbabwe. It's a country in Southern Africa. I was born to uh, loving parents, Roy and Patrick Chakauya. I have a baby sister. Her name is Pai. I have a niece now. Her name is Zua. Shout out Zua. This is my shout out to you, my new niece that was just born. Um, so I was raised in a pretty traditional household. My parents both attended church. Um, I used to go along with them. I used to listen to the pastor, and I was always asking questions about my faith because I was curious. I was a curious kid. I didn't just ask questions about uh, Christ. I asked questions about everything, and people used to get annoyed because I used to ask so many questions when I was a kid growing up. From a very young age, I wanted for nothing. You know, my parents provided everything for me and my little sister. I went to the best schools that they could provide for us. You know, I was always clothed well. My parents didn't drink, smoke. I wasn't introduced to any sort of abuse of substances in my household. My uncle drank occasionally, and you know, it was just never a serious issue in our household. When I was when I was about 13, 14, there's these national examinations that you take in Zimbabwe, and I did pretty poorly the first time round. So my mom had a hard time finding a good high school for me to go into. So she pulled some strings, and I got into this school in the rural areas in Zimbabwe. And when I got there, I told myself that I was going to change my life. I told myself I didn't want to embarrass myself ever again because I did really bad in those exams. So I started excelling in school. I applied myself to my schoolwork in high school. You know, ended up graduating top of my class. Whilst I was in high school, I also played multiple sports. I was the captain of the men's field hockey team. I played rugby, basketball, cricket, track and field. I stayed as busy as possible inside and outside of the classroom. I was part of many clubs, ballroom dancing, you name it. I did everything that I could do in high school, and it paid off because you know at the time I was praying every night before I went to bed, out of duty. I would pray every morning before I went to school, just out of this sense of responsibility and duty. But I never really knew Christ. But He still blessed me. When I was 16, I took these national board examinations again, and then I did really well this time around. And the Lord blessed me and opened so many doors for me. I was 16. I was awarded a full scholarship to go and study in China. I went to Hong Kong for 2 years. I studied at a school called the United World College of Hong Kong. And, you know, that was the first time I was introduced to the real nightlife, or what you would say is a party culture, because we were kids living in a foreign country, 16, 17-year-olds. And our parents were back home in our own countries because I went to school with kids from all over the world in that school. And so we started partying, we started going out, enjoying ourselves because it was that sense of freedom. We still had the responsibility of maintaining good grades, but we entertained ourselves on the weekends by going out to downtown Hong Kong, Central, and just partying all night. We had no clue what we are doing, what we're getting into. A lot of other kids from Europe had previous experience with this stuff, so I was just kind of catching up. I was playing catch up. I didn't know how to hold my liquor. I didn't know how to smoke cigarettes. None of that. But I found it interesting because by the time I got to college, so the Lord blessed me through those 2 years in China. I made a lot of good friends, and I had this sense of, hey, I'm not so naive anymore. I know a little bit about the world. And then I came to the United States on another scholarship because the Lord opened that door for me to come here because He creates all these opportunities for us. Like He created the He allowed me to go to Hong Kong so I could be standing here right now talking to you guys. In the long run, this was always His plan for me to come to Mission Teens, for me to go through this process with you guys. So anyway, when I came to the U.S., I thought it was like the movie American Pie. I grew up watching that movie, so I came ready to party. I came amped up, ready to go, and I was part of the rugby team. So immediately, I already had an immediate group of friends. We studied hard, we worked hard on the rugby field, and we partied hard. Those are the three things that we did. And so, fast forward, my freshman year was pretty much a haze. I was just everywhere. Everyone knew me. I was literally just trying to make as many friends as possible, international friends, local friends. You could find me here, find me there. I was just like a social butterfly. Um, and then my sophomore year, I was introduced to Adderall in college. And this was because mainly I was stretching myself too thin. I had the sports, I had the classwork I had to keep up with. And then I also had this lifestyle I was trying to live, partying on the weekends, all weekend long, and trying to show up to Monday as someone who can actually participate in the school. I have to maintain my grades, I have to maintain a GPA so that I keep my scholarship, right? So someone in my rugby team introduced me to Adderall, and that was the beginning of a cycle of abuse of something that I thought was helping me. My just to go backwards to when I was a kid, I did have hyperactivity as a child, but my mom just took it upon herself not to put me on medication, and thank God for that. I wasn't medicated as a kid. They just kind of pushed me into sports, made me tired, through doing sports, being active, kind of spending that energy in a positive way. So anyway, in college, I'm like, hey, I have ADHD, so give me Adderall. So I started using that as an excuse, as a crutch, like my childhood, for me to continue abusing this substance. And on top of that, obviously, I was drinking as well, smoking weed, experimenting with other drugs, like college drugs, party drugs. You know what I mean? And I never found it to have an issue because at the same time, I was still maintaining a certain grade point average. I was still playing sports. I still had the social capital, friends, associates, girlfriends, stuff like that. And then, at the same time, I'm not going to church. I'm avoiding church like the plague. There were many people that came around me during that time, and I believe God was sending people. Jamie Hand, some friends from Zimbabwe that were in my college. They were still part of the church. They still would go to church, and they encouraged me to come to church with them. But I avoided it like the plague because I knew the life I was living wasn't a godly life. Um, So around my sophomore year, I met some guys. I'm feeling lonely at this point. I'm 16 years old. I'm living in the United States. I'm not 16. I was 16 years old. I left Zimbabwe at 16. And now I'm like around 19, 20. I've been away from home for like 4 or 5 years. And I'm feeling lonely. I feel everyone gets homesick. I used to get really homesick. And I didn't have a solid relationship with my family at this point because they were all the way in Africa. And I'm here living this lifestyle. It was kind of hard for me to connect with them because I didn't really want to be honest with them about what I was up to in college. I wasn't flunking out or anything, so I felt like that should be fine. And that should be fine. I shouldn't have to explain myself. Anyway, so I get introduced to these guys from West Africa. One young guy at first, and then his brother joined. But anyway, these guys came to the college that I went to in Vermont. They were, you know, they went to the same high school system I went to. They went to Costa Rica. I went to Hong Kong. So there was like international school vibes with them. We all connected on the fact that we were young and living abroad. But the only cool thing that I found about them was they were authentically African, right? They had this connection to their roots. They always wore African clothing. They were very proud to speak about African religion and the things that their family participated in. They had like family shrines, like this honor system. The dude was like both Japanese and Ghanaian, so he had both the Japanese, sort of like mysticism and spirituality, and then he also had the African aspect, which was, attractive to me because I'm like trying to figure out who I am in the world, and I fell into the occult basically. I fell into practicing West African religion or voodoo. It started small, just like everything. You get a small bit of this, a small bit of that, and you think, hey, this is not harmful. It's helping me actually. And plus, I get to hang out with these guys. It gives me a sense of community, a sense of brotherhood, a sense of friendship. That's why we need the church, by the way, because when we're out there, that's the church. That's what their church looks like. The church of the enemy, that is. So we need to stick with each other. You know, we need to stick with our brothers and sisters. We need to stick with our Christian brothers and sisters, because I was like that lamb that had been separated from the flock, and I was vulnerable to attack. So I fell into the wrong crowd, started sending money to Ghana, doing sacrifices, participating in rituals, paying for this, paying for that, doing all sorts of things that I never thought in a million years I would ever do. And I mean, I did it because it worked. I did it because it gave me results, and I didn't have to wait for them. I didn't have to have patience. I didn't have to pray about it. I just needed to follow the formula, and it worked. So it solved my issues without me having to rely on anyone but myself. Um, Fast forward, I graduate after 4 years, and I'm a mess. I'm an addict, because guess what? There's no morality in that. You can continue your bad behavior. No one asks you to change anything. You can just keep doing as you wish. Do as thou wilt. Basically, like, you can do anything. If you get in trouble, we'll help you get out of trouble. No consequences for your actions. Just keep living the life you're living, and it makes you fall into more deeper darkness. And that's where I was at the end of my 4 years. I remember my graduation day, I was crying, not because I was happy I graduated. I was just crying because I felt this huge sadness that all these 4 years, all I did was party. I didn't really apply myself. I didn't really give myself any chances. All I did was do the bare minimum and show up when I needed to show up. But I was sad because I was mourning this sense of innocence that I lost throughout my experience in college. I graduated. I had a girlfriend. She was a Hindu. We ended up getting married. And that was a disaster because, one, I know the Lord had his hand on me. I was cold from a young age. And any sort of union where you're unequally yoked was never going to work out. But at the time, I'm thinking, oh, I'm practicing African spirituality. I'm woke. LGBTQ, yay. Everything, yay. Like, I'm a worldly person as it comes. Like, let that person do what they want. That's their life. Let them live however they want. I don't need to change anything about them, and I don't need to change anything about myself. I'm perfectly messed up. I was comfortable in my mess. And so it just perpetuated. I ended up getting a prescription for Adderall after college. And then once I had a prescription, I could just lie to doctors and uh, continually just fill my prescription and destroy my life even more. I destroyed many opportunities, many jobs, um, the relationship with my mom and my dad. I was a very close with my family growing up, and over the years I just drifted. And you know, they came all the way from Zimbabwe to the United States to helped me because I was going through a bitter divorce. I was basically sounding like a crazy person on the phone because I was up for days using drugs. I was sounding like I was going through stuff. And around this time, I want to explain that the demonic realm is real. The things I was messing with were like real things. And I had no clue until the moment I decided, hey, I want something different for my life. I want to try something different. I want to go a different direction. I want to search for something better than this. The moment I decided I wanted to leave that lifestyle, that's when the spiritual attacks started happening. That's when the unexplainable stuff started happening, the nightmares, the night terrors, the visions, the actual seeing things that I can't explain. The lost opportunities, everything falling through my fingers, sure wins just ending up being failures. It just was a total disaster. My life was a train wreck. My life was a train wreck, was a mess. Lost my friends, barely had my family in my corner. Uh, so anyway, fast forward, right? Um, at my wits' end, at this point, I've started getting in trouble with the law. I started fighting with the cops every opportunity I get. If I drink, if I party and they pull me over, if I get stopped on the side of the road, I immediately feel attacked. So I was having bad interactions with law enforcement, constantly in and out of psych wards, jails, on multiple medications because they think I'm crazy. Uh, Mainly because I'm using drugs, but because of the things I'm doing when I'm high, jumping out of buildings, jumping out of windows, like running from the police, all sorts of crazy, unbelievable, if I was to get into them, stories you would never imagine, right? I was finding myself in these situations on a regular basis. It was like, where's Simba now? Simba's in jail. Or where's Simba now? He's in the psych ward. Where's Simba now? He's in a rehab. He's in a program. Every program I completed, I immediately failed right afterwards. Every secular program. I've been to literally most programs in New Jersey that would take me repeatedly multiple times. I've tried most sober living houses, most recovery programs in New Jersey. If you need information about them, I probably been there. I tried every single option I had that the government had to offer, even private insurance had to offer. You know what I mean? Before I lost all the opportunities I had with private insurance, I would go to places, I would stay a little bit, and then I would just say this is not for me and leave. Um, I did that so many times. I kept running, I kept running, I kept running, and then I would think, this is gonna fix me, that's gonna fix me, this relationship's gonna fix me. Never did. All I needed was Jesus, and I didn't even know it until I remember once I'd broken my back, broken my legs, fell from 4 stories, right? There's a whole story behind that experience, and I don't want to get into it now because I don't have much time, but I'm in the hospital, right? Unable to go to the bathroom, unable to take care of myself. And I remember seeing an episode of The Chosen. Something just told me, Google this, because I had my phone, so I was just trying to find some hope. I'm broken. I have nobody. I'm alone in this hospital, this crappy hospital room. And I find an episode of The Chosen, and it is the first episode of season 1. And for some reason, as soon as I see the character of Jesus interacting with the kids and just the kind of love that I saw displayed on screen, it just made me start crying because I'm like, what kind of man is this? And obviously I knew who Jesus was from being a kid. And I'm thinking, can he still love a person like me in this state? For the first time, I cried out to him. I gave my life to him in that room that day. And immediately the Holy Spirit came upon me, and I was just sobbing, crying, thinking about all the painful stuff I put myself through. Fast forward a few months after that, I found out about Mission Teens. I was in a halfway house, and I heard Taylor Box on the radio interviewing someone who'd come through the program, and that's how I heard about this mission. And God blessed me, allowed me to come to the mission. Sometime later, I was on that very same radio show that Taylor Box I heard in the halfway house in Vineland. So it kind of came full circle in the sense that I actually got interviewed by Taylor himself, the same way I've heard about this program. So I hope that someone else heard my testimony and was able to come through here. Long story short, guys, I have beaten cases while being here. I'm looking at certain prison time. I never I was on more than 6 or 7 different medications for psych. Don't take a single one today. I only take vitamins. Um, the Lord restored my green card, which was in the air, and this mission helped me do that. Um, the Lord restored my relationship with my parents, with my sister. The Lord has given me my health back, my clarity back in my mind. He's given me purpose. The Lord has changed my life, changed it completely. And I can't express how much gratitude I have for Mission Teens, for the people that have been there through this entire time with me. And there was a time when I could have left. I could have left. I could have taken drug court, but I trusted the Lord. They prayed over me here. Mission Teens here and other missions prayed over me. And I went to that court date, and the judge said to me, and I'm going to end on this. He said, I was looking at 7 years plus in prison. And he said, you know what? Go back to that place, finish that program. And I think I might have been a TC or something. Finish that program. If they allow you to do staff training, you better stay and give back what you've been so freely given. And then he said to me, maybe you're not supposed to be an architect of buildings, because my college degree was architecture. He was like, maybe you're not supposed to be an architect of buildings, but an architect of people's lives. And that is the judge of my case, who I don't know if he was a believer or not, but saying something like that made me feel like he was. So anyway, if you guys stick and stay, if you guys stick it out, I believe that the Lord can do wonderful and mighty things in your lives. And thank you for letting me share.